Have you ever clicked on a square in a game only to find it jumping outside its container? It can be frustrating, right? If you face this issue, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to tackle how to prevent an element from exceeding its container borders. I totally get it. It's annoying when your shapes don't behave as expected, especially when you're trying to create a smooth user experience. You're not alone in this. Many developers encounter this issue. Here's the specific situation we're addressing. One user asked, "How can I make sure that my square will never exceed its container?" They mentioned that sometimes their square exceeds the container borders, even when it should not. Sound familiar? Let's dive into this together. So what's happening here? When you position elements randomly, they can sometimes overlap or extend beyond their designated area. This can be due to the size of the element and its position relative to the container. We'll break it down step by step to find a solution. And stick around. I have a great tip at the end that will help you manage element positioning like a pro. To ensure that the square never exceeds its container borders, the user should first calculate the maximum position values based on the size of the square and the container. This will help in positioning the square correctly. Next, the user should modify the position function to include these maximum values. This way, the square will only be positioned within the allowed area. Now, the user should ensure that the dimensions of the square are taken into account when calculating the maximum positions. This will prevent any overflow beyond the container. Finally, the user can test the implementation by clicking the square and observing its movement. The square should now stay within the borders of the container. Fun fact, did you know that the first graphical user interfaces were developed in the 1970s? They were a game changer, but positioning elements was a lot trickier back then. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative solution provided by a user suggests specifying a range for the random position of the square. They recommend using the math.floor function to limit the random values between a minimum and maximum range. This ensures the square stays within the container borders. Let's take a look at an answer from another user. An alternative approach to prevent the square from exceeding its container borders involves setting the parent element's position to relative and the square's position to absolute. This way, you can calculate the maximum height and width for the square based on the parent's dimensions, ensuring it stays within bounds. Additionally, the user suggests updating the position and size functions to ensure the square's dimensions are considered when calculating its new position. This prevents any part of the square from going outside the play area. That wraps up that answer. Let's move on to another one. An alternative solution involves using CSS calc to limit the square's position within the play space. By calculating the position with offsets, you can ensure the square never exceeds the container borders. That's the end of that answer. Let's see another perspective. An alternative approach suggests setting the containing element to position relative and the inner element to position absolute. This way, the inner element's position will be calculated from the borders of the container. Additionally, you should validate the position values. For position top, ensure it falls within a specific range based on the shape's height. Similarly, for position left, set it within a range based on the shape's width. That's the end of that answer. Let's see another perspective. An alternative approach suggested by a user involves checking the size of the parent element. In your script, you can use conditions to ensure the square does not exceed its container. First, get the width and height of the parent element. Then, when generating random positions, make sure they stay within the bounds of the parent element. Here's the tip I promised. Always calculate the available space before positioning elements. This simple habit can save you from a lot of headaches down the line. And there you have it. Your square should now stay within its container borders. Remember, proper positioning is key to a smooth user experience. If you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button for more tips, and don't miss our next video on advanced positioning techniques.